Let's take a look at some basic CSS rules that we can use in our projects. I've opened up First CSS, and we'll take a look at each rule individually to see how it works. The text decoration rule allows us to set an overline, underline, or a strike through on our text. Here we can see the underline style. The overline style, and the line through style. When using links, they receive a default underline style. So we can specifically target links and set their text decoration to none to remove this default behavior. Width and height will allow us to force a size for one of our elements. We'll start with a basic div. With some content inside. I'll give this div an ID so that we can uniquely identify it in our CSS. I'll open this file by right-clicking and choosing Open in Browser. And here we can see we have our Hello World printed to the screen. As I open the Developer Tools and highlight this element, we can see that it receives some formatting from the browser. By default, the browser makes divs block level elements. Block level elements will fill the width of the screen. Our body comes with some basic margin, so that's why we're seeing that this div does not fill the screen. In order to see width as we're working in the browser, I'll add to the element style here just to test. Let's see what happens if we change the width of this element. In my CSS file, I'll target the div, and I'll add a width rule. I'll set the width to 50 pixels for now. Saving the file and refreshing our page, we'll see that Hello World has now moved to 2 lines, and our rule of 50 pixels has applied. The margin here is automatically calculated based on the width that we've supplied. Now let's edit the height of this element. I've reset our CSS so that there are no rules applied to Hello World, and we can see that the calculated height of our element is 18 pixels. This is calculated based on the font size. I'm also zoomed in on the page so it seems a little bit larger. Changing the height of this element to 100 pixels and refreshing the page doesn't look like it changed anything. We can see that our rule is applied here, but when I mouse over this element, we can see that the new height is 100 pixels, regardless of the content size. This is because both width and height are automatically calculated based on the core browser rules, as well as the content of the element. When we force a height or a width, we're actually overriding the default browser behavior. The color rule allows us to override the default coloring of an item at the text level. By default, our text is black. Let's make it red. And now our color is red. The background property allows us to set the color and even images as a background to an element. Let's say I want the Hello World div to have a specific background color. I can set background to red, and reloading the page will see that this div now has a background of red. I've downloaded a background.png file so that we can set a background on this element as an image. In order to set an image, I'll use the URL property. I'll set it to my background. And let's see what this looks like. Here we can see the background has been set and is filling the content. Let's change this so it applies to the body of our document. I'll change my selector to body, save, and reload the page. And we can see that it fills the content. If we want to control this background image a little more, we can add properties like no repeat, which will prevent our image from tiling. The border property allows us to set a border on our element. We'll specify it by setting the width of each border, the style, and the color. Refreshing our page shows that our div has been outlined by a red solid border 1 pixel wide. Increasing the width property will give us a thicker border. And the style type property allows us to change what the border looks like. Based on the box model, padding allows us to specify some distance between the border and the content. Let's add a border so we can see what this looks like. I'll add a 1 pixel solid black border to our Hello World div. Now let's add some padding. Add a 20 pixel padding all the way around our element. This gives our content a little bit of breathing room while still being contained inside of the border. Let's add a background color to see what that looks like. Add a light gray background. As we can see, the border contains the background, which contains the padding, which contains the content. Mousing over our div will show that our border is outside with a large green box containing a smaller blue box, where blue is the content, green is the padding, the outer outline is the border. Padding, as with many rules, can be defined in different ways. This version will set the padding all the way around. This version will set the padding for the top and bottom, and then the left and right. Let's see what that looks like. Here we can see we have a smaller vertical padding and a larger horizontal padding. The final version allows us to specify each set individually. This format follows the top, right, bottom, left format. Mousing over this item shows an increasing padding starting from the top and going clockwise around to the left. Margin is a bit like padding, but it sits on the outside of our element. With padding, we saw that as we added padding, the content was pushed around, and the background and the border were contained. Let's add some margin to our Hello World div. Margin is defined in a similar way to padding, where we can specify all, top, bottom, and left, right, or top, right, bottom, and left. Let's start by adding 20 pixels all the way around our div. Here we can see the content is pushed in, but the border and the content remain the same size. Mousing over this div will show a larger orange border around our element, which will push away any other elements nearby.